Well, hello everybody. So, welcome to week 5 and 5 through 9 being our writing break. I want to start with a couple of mea culpas. In an effort knowing that I had this Hawaii trip that I mentioned kind of up front, I left a few of the course announcements. Those of you who teach on a course management system might understand. I left a few of the things like inspirational things for writing and that kind of thing and then change the dates on when they would be released, thinking they were already there and were helpful last year to students, or at least I hope they were. So I left them up, and then I thought I had changed the dates appropriately, gotten rid of the ones that just didn't match, that kind of thing. But 2 have gone out now that just didn't jive. They're not wrong, but the dates are off. And the thing about me being out of the country in June, it was off. Anyway, I really apologize, and that just was not good planning or quality control kind of on my part. So I think I'm fixing them all. In fact, I'm just going to take down all these others because they're popping up, even though I think I've repaired the problem. So, but I did want to. It is true that you need to get your final planning document. 10% of the grade. There's an assignment link for that. Many of you are well on the way, I think, to preparing that, as you have posted in the discussion forum. And then the other thing is, in week 6, there's a very kind of small self-assessment of your participation so far and what you're learning and that kind of thing. And you can just copy and paste that directly into the assignment link, and that'll be right into the grade book, and I can easily review it. So that is correct, but those dates were not correct. So I've fixed that, and I'm doing this little bit of a video about our last week's discussion because, they were fairly routine questions about what are you doing next, and then the legal ethical that we had addressed a little bit before. But you brought up some just excellent other points, and I want to be sure that everybody did have a look at those. So the preparing to write question, great comments about query letters, and as I responded in a couple of instances, query letters I think are a very strong way to go about things for a manuscript or a grant, as Nancy brought up, because you can send out a few to what you think might be appropriate sources of funding or publication, and you're not locked in to any of those. Whereas if you send out a publication or if you prepare a grant for a certain funding agency, you really can't double dip and send that to something else. So the query letter, I think, is a very good way to go about that. The idea of creating an outline using the headings that are suggested in the manuscript guidelines, very good idea. Just like for an assignment, it's very helpful to the faculty to be able to really locate all the parts of an assignment, so the same certainly is true for an editor. I appreciate the idea of more practice, and that's why I think this course, I really like this course. I think it's really fun. But I wanted to mention a couple of things. It's true that there are some external sources like the NLN. Specialty organizations sometimes have mentoring, writing retreats, or I was participated in one for the Oncology Nursing Society that was a year-long mentorship, and I worked with a fairly novice writer, and we did get that published, and it was a really great experience. And I received a small stipend, she received a stipend. We could have even traveled, although we didn't choose to do that, but we could have phone calls and other ways of support. So investigate that, because those certainly are great opportunities. So those are good things. And then Nancy made a really good point that certainly grant writing is very similar in so many ways, and I think we'll learn a lot from her experience as well. I did want to mention, related to this, since this has kind of come up, that we do have the ability to have an alternative form of dissertation. And it's not a well-known fact. We haven't done it. I had a student very interested who has since decided not to go there. But we do. It's approved by the graduate school. We would be so excited for students to do this. And 2 of us have worked with that kind of situation before, so have some experience guiding you, and I've gone to several conferences and programs about this, because I really think it's a great way to go. I mean, if you could finish your dissertation and your doctoral work with a couple of publications versus just this five-chapter volume that sits on shelves sometime, wouldn't that be a much better idea? So you have to do a traditional chapter 1 to kind of introduce your study idea. You can do, for chapter 2, you can do a review of lit, or a state of the science, or a conceptual kind of paper. You still would have to meet the requirements of the review of literature, of course, for your topic, but you could gauge it by the journal guidelines. Chapter 3 is the methods. You kind of have to do that traditionally, and it really is the basis of the IRB. So, I think I've recommended so far that people just do the usual Chapter 3. But Chapter 4, results, is a research paper. After all, that's what you're going to publish for the most part, at least the first thing that you might publish. So you can do a manuscript for that, and then Chapter 5 has to be the more traditional discussion. There are a few things to be concerned about, copyright issues and that kind of thing. I even talked to somebody about that today. But those are all not insurmountable and are things that we can work through, various mechanisms that can be done. So think about it, and if that interests you as you talk or interview people for a chair for your research advisor, or already have a committee selected, talk about that. I think most of us would be very willing. And then the legal ethical issues question, we had, as I said, visited just briefly before, but some very good points came up. The idea of incentives or not extra credit in a course. If you do that, you certainly have to make some alternative experience available to other students. You can do lottery things or drawings or any of those kind of things. And actually, I think those might be better in some ways than the individual incentive and would cost less for you. Many funding agencies, if you do some small funding for your dissertations, will cover small incentive. Really good points about conflict of interest, and we just cannot be too careful about that. I'm sure you're well aware that many high-profile researchers, some pharmaceutical companies, but others as well, have really gotten completely, their careers have been ruined because they did not disclose a conflict of interest, or the conflict that they had affected their research or affected the results or the publication of those results. So that is a complete no-no. It's much more expected now that people will fully disclose, and that doesn't bar you from funding or publication, but it is, an upfront acknowledgement that there could be some conflict. And then really good points in about Shay's work with quality improvement and whether that needs to have IRB consideration. That's gone all around the issue. Most people agree that if you're going to publish it, no matter what you call quality improvement in educational or in a clinical setting, you need to have IRB approval. Now, sometime the IRB will say this isn't really something that we need to consider. It's not research. But you'll get a letter. I had a DNP student with that exact situation, but you'll still get a letter that it was reviewed, and then that kind of covers you. The most people feel that really done well, a QI improvement project is extremely valuable, and there's no reason it should not be at least reviewed by IRB. And as I said, if you're going to publish it, most journals require that you have had an IRB review. So, and also, I believe it was Shay, also made some really good points about doing research with students. Not only that power differential and all the things, them being a vulnerable population that we talked about, but then in some cultural groups, we need to be very mindful of the fact there might be such respect accorded to a teacher, to a faculty member, that they don't feel they have the right to refuse. That is not actually true for them, that they have the right of refusal or the right to stop participation if they have agreed to participate. So really, really important. Good comments too. I think it might have been Raiden, that so many study. The college students are, of course, a great group in many ways because they're hungry and they have loans, and they're glad to make a little extra money. I did several things as a college student and also as a new faculty, including a sleep study, which was really interesting. Took all night, but for a $50 incentive, a gift card, whatever. So as long as the students know that they are free to not participate, and there are ways of giving them some sort of incentive. But on the other hand, we have to think about the fact that we have an awful lot of research out there, especially from the past, that has been based on relatively young adults, healthy, probably, not life experience, not any of those things. We have not done a lot of the research that needs to be done, especially about learning, teaching learning, with the more mature student or the not traditional student or the student with English as second language or any of those things. And those things desperately, I think, need to be done. So anyway, really, really good other discussion, and thank you for that. And we're setting out on our writing break. Those inspirational comments that came out with this announcement, I think, are very suitable. You got to start. You got to put stuff down on paper. I have several quotes sort of like that, and in the end, I'll give you the site, which is just full of author quotes from well-known folks and the kind of things that they could pass along as far as their wisdom is concerned. So good luck on the writing. I will be grading our discussion. I'm sorry I wasn't quite as active last week as I like to be, given the difference in time and the 3 baby grandkids around. But I will be responding to most of those posts. Many of those, and I will keep in touch. Please let me know if you have questions or things that have come up, or a change, and that's all fine. You can certainly make a change in your topic, but do get that first planning document in. And hope it's a good week and a good time for you. And take care. Bye bye.